How we doing?
Wow.
All
It's a
right.
hell of an intro.
Just getting my stuff situated. Welcome to the slate. We're covering Major League Baseball tonight. There's 11 games on the night slate. We will not talk about 6 o'clock baseball. So you can go do
Good.
that somewhere else. Steve Buchanan, Garion Thorne, Brendan Glasheen. Hi, guys.
How are
Hello.
you?
Oh, this is a step, Gary, and he's asking me how I'm doing. I'm
I
great.
mean, that's the thing, man. Open communication. I
Yeah.
feel like I've never been to therapy, but that's what I hear about it from the television.
Right.
That seems like a positive step.
Everything okay with you two after how Robbie Ray pitched last night?
It's fine because he's still the favorite. Like you keep bringing this up like it's an insult. And once
It's
again,
not.
like
I'm just
fi-
asking.
find someone with the balls of steel that I do to say this guy's going to win. He's 80-1 right now, and then he's the overwhelming favorite with about 10 days left in the season. All right. Then you can be a jerk to me if you can find somebody else that does that.
I'm just worried. I mean, it hit me doubly hard because obviously every Robbie Ray loss is not just a loss to my money; it's a loss for the Blue Jays. But
Right.
I'm worried for Ron Culpa a little bit. Kind of squeezing Robbie Ray last night. I'm
Little
worried
bit.
what Steve might track down Ron Culpa and have some words to say at some point if the next 10 days don't go as planned.
Don't worry,
Okay.
we have Papa Shungo on speed dial. And let me tell you, since Papa Shungo is unleashed, Garrett Cole has an ERA of over 6.
Yes.
So I'm not saying that things don't happen, but things happen when I get Papa Shungo on the phone.
Right. There's no fear, and he's at plus 180 now, Garrett Cole, and he has not pitched better. So I think you're fine. I was just asking a question. I am facilitating conversation here as the host of the 3-person booth. It's just a question. I know what we talked about off the air, but it needs to be brought to the air. Anyway, there is a new slate to be discussed. 11 games in Major League Baseball. Steve, you seem ready to go. What jumps out at you on this slate this evening?
Pitching on this slate can be had at very cheap tonight, I think. Jordan Montgomery going up against the lowly Texas Rangers at 8,300 tonight is got to be one of the best plays, I think, overall at the pitching department. 8,300 going against a Rangers team that is literally at the bottom of the league in every offensive category that you don't want them to be at the bottom at. WRC plus, WOBA, isolated power, just being a fun team. They're at the bottom of the league in all of those categories. And now they face Jordan Montgomery, who's coming off a career performance against the Orioles, 12 strikeouts in that game. Tough team to strike out against lefties, by the way. 1 run allowed on 6 hits, pretty impressive. Jordan Montgomery's usually not that guy. I'm not saying he's going to go out there and strike out 10 guys that are on the Rangers tonight, but at 8,300, I was surprised at how cheap he was after that performance from his last time out. So pitching, I think, is something you can go cheap at tonight.
And Gary, and you're willing to spend a little bit more after reading up on your cheat sheet on DK Nation.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I like Montgomery a lot, and I would actually say that he's going to be a fixture in many of my lineups. And one of the big reasons for that, and we'll get to Kevin Gausman in just a second, is I don't really trust any pitching below Jordan Montgomery. I mean, this is not going to be a slate, I think, where you can, pay for a top end starter and then really try to save some money with a value guy towards the bottom end, because there's just really no one to trust. And this is one of those, we kind of talked about this, I think, last time we were on with you, Glash, where there are going to be certain things you have to watch for with September DFS, because baseball changes in very fundamental ways when the rosters expand slightly. And, they didn't expand to 40, but they're still slightly bigger than they were before.
Right.
There are so many openers and bulk pitchers on this slate. And the guys who are actually maybe in line to throw, like, I would even say like 5 or 6 innings. Like, do you really want to use Drew Rasmussen against the Blue Jays? I mean, he's probably going to be all right, but that's not a great spot. Even if you don't factor in how well the Blue Jays hit, they're just not a team that strikes out all that much. Griffin Jacks, I mean, we like to go say, hey, use anyone against the Cubs. Griffin Jacks is awful. This guy gives up so many home runs, 2.7 home runs per 9 to right-handed batters so far this season. The wind is blowing in tonight at Wrigley, so maybe that does change your perception of that game slightly, but the guys who have at least a runway to throw 5 innings tonight, Blackburn, Woodford, like, who do you want to use? There's just no floor here at all. So I really do think the combination is going to be someone like Gosman paired up with a, quote unquote value pitcher, except value tonight means $8,300 with Jordan Montgomery, who I do think is in a very good spot. But yeah, let's talk about Gosman. So Gosman, I think there's this perception that he's been pitching poorly in the month of September because he's got a 4.7 ERA in the month. However, his underlying statistics suggest that he's actually been pitching better in his last 4 starts than he has all season long. He's got a 33.3% strikeout rate in that span of time. He's got a 10.7 strikeout to walk ratio in that span of time. So a 4.70 ERA becomes a 2.00 xFIP. He's just getting BABIP'd to death, and every single runner that gets on base is somehow scoring. So I just think Gosman's in line for a lot of positive regression tonight, and I think the Padres are the perfect team to do that because if you go across the last 14 days, the Padres rank dead last in baseball in isolated power and WRC+. They're just not hitting. They have 4 home runs the last 2 weeks. This is a team we spent the entire winter fantasizing about how good this team could be. They have completely fallen off the rails. So I think Gosman's in a really nice spot. And I think the fact that maybe some people think he's pitching poorly could work to your advantage in tournaments.
Still can't get over how the Giants, every year, it seems like now finally it's an odd year where the Giants are actually pretty decent. But yeah, you're right, Gary. And all the talk about the Padres, of course, the Dodgers are loaded, but the Giants having a season no one expected, and they clearly bought in when they went after Bryant at the deadline, but a team that is very much in the mix, and Gosman has pitched well and is in a good spot. We shift to hitters. So I guess in that sense, if you have doubts about pitching tonight and value, as Garion said, your value plays might have to be lower end expensive guys in that high 7, early or low 8 range. Does that mean you can spend up at hitter, Steve?
You can absolutely do so tonight. And we just put Gosman in, we put Montgomery in. That leaves you with an average of 39.50 for the rest of your hitters. First and foremost, you punt the catcher like we do every single time. Doesn't matter. You just scroll down the bottom of the list. Who has a cool name that's starting tonight? Nito. Sure, Nito. Well, let's put him in. All right. Now you're at 4,100. That's extremely doable for the rest of your lineup when it comes to hitters tonight. And there's a lot of teams that you can stack tonight because of all the reasons that Gary was saying. We have a ton of openers going into the bullpen that's going tonight. We have a lot of guys you can just target in general, like Luke Weaver's going tonight. His numbers have been atrocious, really bad against lefties. Not a good thing to have when you're going up against the Braves. There's a lot of ways you can go on this slate. There's a slate at a game at Coors Field tonight, which has not been a good spot for the over. But anytime you get a team like the Dodgers at Coors Field, you got to look at the Dodgers in that scenario. So this gives you a lot of wiggle room to do that. There's some really good value plays that I like tonight, like even like someone like Matt Duffy, who is actually one of my favorite value plays. He's only batting 7th. I was hoping he was batting leadoff, but Matt Duffy going against someone like Griffin Jax, who literally has the worst numbers on this slate against both sides of the plate. And you have somebody like Matt Duffy, who in the month of September has almost a 300 isolated power. Like, look at the game log here. The last 5 games, he's posting up double digits like it's nobody's business. That's not what Matt Duffy's supposed to do. But the Cubs have been hitting after the trade deadline for whatever reason. Duffy's been one of those guys. So there's a lot of different ways to go on this slate. But with the very limited pitching options you want to use and some of the guys on the cheaper end that are viable, you can absolutely do a lot of damage with your hitters tonight and the money you can spend up for them.
How did Duffy get cheaper? How is that possible?
Let me tell you something. The DraftKings algorithm, I can't figure it out. I will never be able to figure it out. There's a lot of questionable decisions that algorithm makes. I don't care that I work for DraftKings. It doesn't make any sense. All right. But I'm not going to complain when someone like Matt Duffy, who has at least 10 DraftKings fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games, is the bare minimum. Guys who aren't even playing are the same price as Matt Duffy. So, I mean, I never thought I'd be on this, show beating my chest saying you need to play Matt Duffy tonight. But you know what? It's getting near the end of the season, and here we are.
Gary, and there's a lot of favorable matchups also when you look at Philadelphia's lineup, also Houston's lineup with Philly taking on Baltimore, and also Philadelphia taking on the Orioles.
Yeah, I mean, I think that game in general, you're probably going to see a lot of like Chris Ellis. You're probably going to see a bunch of Matt Moore, which, I mean, You don't need me to tell you that Matt Moore pitching in a game probably means a lot of runs will be scored. Ryan Mountcastle, I will say, is not in the lineup tonight for the Orioles, which is unfortunate. He's been really hot since about mid-August. He's crushed left-handed pitching so far this season, so he would have been a really nice target. However, the nice thing that does do for the Orioles lineup is Mountcastle was their only play, well, aside from Cedric Mullins, but Mountcastle was the most expensive player on the team and about the only guy priced above 4K. So if you do want to use anyone in a, premium lineup spot for the Orioles, you can do so at a very cheap price. The Phillies are also kind of interesting in that sense because while you do have someone like Bryce Harper, who, if you're going with a Gausman, Montgomery 1-2 at pitcher, you might not have enough funds left to get someone like Bryce Harper into a lineup as much as you would love to. I mean, this is someone who has a 214 WRC plus the last 2 months. There's a reason he's now the favorite on the DraftKings Sportsbook to win National League MVP. He's been that good. But if you can't afford someone like Harper, you can still get like JT Realmuto is $4,100. It is crazy to see a player of his caliber. Yes, a player slumping, but a player of his caliber at that price point. It's just not something I'm used to seeing. And then like Odubel Herrera at 3,600 leading off for the Phillies tonight. He has crushed right-handed pitching since the beginning of August, has incredible numbers within that split across the last 7 weeks. So you can really cobble together some nice lineups here. Even someone like Brad Miller. Like, I know it's not the sexiest name in the world, but 3,300, hitting fifth, going up against an Orioles team that, I mean, let's just be frank, their pitching staff as a whole is giving up more than 2 home runs per 9 in the month of September. Miller's had a couple multi-home run games so far this season. Like, he's shown off his ceiling from time to time. So I think the Phillies are nice because they not only check that box of they're playing the Orioles, but aside from Harper, they're exceedingly cheap.
So would you move off of Harper and spend elsewhere, or is 6,000 a number you're okay with?
I mean, look, if you have the funds to roster Bryce Harper in the month of September, you roster Bryce Harper in the month of September. Like if you're stacking the Phillies, if your game plan is to stack the Phillies on this slate, which sounds like a great idea, you try to figure out how you get Harper into that lineup first and foremost because of the way that he's been hitting this month. Like Garion said, he has overtaken he's now the odds-on favorite to win the National League MVP, which is something that Fernando Tatis Jr. for months has had a stranglehold on, but that just goes to tell you how well his September has gone for the Phillies. And it's a big reason why the Phillies are very much in playoff contention, because a couple of weeks ago, looked like that season was over. Garion can tell you all about that with the Blue Jays. Sometimes your fortune's turn, no problem. Now things are going well. But Bryce Harper has been a big reason for that. So if you are planning to stack the Phillies, the first thing I do is plug in Bryce Harper and then figure out the rest from there, because that is the guy you obviously want in that lineup. He's 6K for a reason because of the way he's been hitting. Pull up his numbers here. An average of 14 DraftKings fantasy points over his last 10 games. I would dare to say he's probably at or close to that for the entire month of September. So you do what you can to put Harper in that lineup if you're stacking the Phillies.
Yeah, it feels like he might be in a better spot too. Just 10 points over the last 2 games for Harper, 10 fantasy points, that is. How about Gary? And I know I think I said the same 2 matchups twice, but I meant to say the Angels are hosting the Astros, and you have multiple Astros in consideration tonight as far as plays.
Yeah, so again, I don't think this is like a sneaky stack by any means, but again, the Astros, the nice thing about this particular stack is it's once again relatively cost effective. Yeah, Altuve is expensive. Yordan Alvarez is expensive, although I'm not quite sure you'd necessarily want to use him against the lefty in Naughton. But you might, because some people might shy away a little bit in that particular matchup, and his splits are perfectly fine. So I do think, though, that the 2 guys who really caught my eye just from a price point perspective were Alex Bregman, who's $4,200 for whatever reason. I can't figure it out.
Yeah.
Generally, when you see a price point like this, there are, usually 1 or 2 reasons you can kind of fall back on. You would assume it's, okay, Bregman came off the IL and he's been cold. No, he's been hitting better than he was before he went on the IL. Since I believe it was August 25th is the date he came off the injured list. He's been amazing. And also, this is someone who has a basically 1,000 OPS against left-handed pitching for his entire career. So we have a very large sample of Alex Bregman crushing left-handed pitching, and Correa is kind of in a similar spot at 4,500. He's just someone who's been red hot in August and September. The power has really come back for him, and he's in an opposite hand matchup. And even when we talk about like getting into the bullpen of the Angels,
Yep.
Correa's got an OPS above 800 against both right-handed and left-handed pitching so far this season. So it's not like once the relievers come in for the Angels, you're suddenly at this stark disadvantage. Correa is going to be good against anyone they throw at him.
What's the more popular stack tonight? Astros or Phillies?
Probably the Phillies, I would say.
Yeah, I would say the Phillies too as well, which in that case, then the Astros are a good tournament team that you could be taking a look at, whereas the Phillies could be is more of a cash viable stack. You can use both in either format, but I would say if you're looking for that safer floor, the Phillies probably have a slight advantage over the Astros tonight.
And you said, Steve, you mentioned something. I know that the total's at 11 runs at Coors Field tonight. Dodgers in town. Are the so after Mookie Betts and Trey Turner, well, a lot of guys up in the 5,000 range. Are the Dodgers too expensive?
Here's the thing about Coors Field is that it has not performed like Coors Field like we have seen it all season long. Like the over is actually has not been hitting at Coors Field. It's actually one of the worst in the league, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Antonio Senzatella has been better at home than he's been on the road, which is kind of like a common theme for the Rockies hitters. But the Dodgers have the overwhelming team total on the slate of 6.5 runs. The biggest thing here really is the Rockies bullpen. While the starting pitchers have been better at home, the bullpen has not. The bullpen have not, taken the same, magic water bottle that the rest of the rotation seemingly has taken. So there's a reason why that they're so expensive. Coors Field hasn't had that dramatic effect that we've seen before, but for this particular matchup with the Dodgers going up Senzatella, I have no problem using them here. But from like a betting perspective, with the game total at 11 runs, I mean, this just screams under to me with Julio Urias taking them out. I mean, this is somebody since the month of July hasn't allowed more than 4 runs in a start. Now, those 4 runs came against the Rockies at Coors Field. But literally since that start, it's been 2 runs or less in 10 straight games. The guy has been absolutely dominant, and I'm not going to say the Rockies are going to do it the second time around against somebody that has put down much more higher profile offenses in that span since he last faced the Rockies at Coors Field. So 11 runs is just way too high for me when, can you realistically get 7 or 8 from the Dodgers? Yes. Are the Rockies going to make up the difference in this matchup with the way that he's been pitching? I don't think so.
And Gary, and looking at the splits that Steve put up earlier today, 89% of the bets are on the over 11 runs. Is Steve on to something?
Yeah, and I think this is just sort of, really, this is how the books get you. I mean, it's really that simple. If you look at the 2 teams who have actually hit their unders at the highest clip so far this season, it is the New York Yankees and it is the Toronto Blue Jays, 2 of the better offenses and the better perceived offenses in all of baseball. Some nights you just have to pay for an extra run and a half when you shouldn't have to because of the known quantity that is those 2 lineups. And it's the exact same thing with Coors Field. We just often see totals that are a couple runs too high because of the allure of Coors Field, how much people are afraid of it, despite the fact that, like Steve was saying, not only have the Rockies pitchers tended to pitch better at Coors Field for whatever reason, but when you look at someone specifically like Antonio Senzatella, he's been kind of great in 2021. Like, it took me a long time to really give him that level of respect. I mean, you can go back and check like my log on playbook. I'm sure well into July, I'm like, stack against this guy. It's all a mirage. It's going to fall apart at some point, whatever. He's got a 3.5 FIP for the season as a whole. He's consistently pitching into the 7th inning the last 2 months. 5 of his last 6 starts, he's allowed 2 earned runs or fewer. Like, he's been really, really good. And I just don't think people are willing to say that Antonio Senzatella is a good pitcher and someone you probably shouldn't stack against. So I think you can definitely play some pieces in this game, because even if it doesn't hit 12 runs and reach the over, you could still have 9 or 10 runs in this game. Like, I think, Brendan Rodgers, who crushes left-handed pitching, is in a really nice spot. Obviously, you can look at, Will Smith's been on fire the past 2 months. There are guys to like in this game, but I do think in general, Senzatella in particular is a better pitcher than this line is giving him credit for.
And look, the Dodgers, of course, are very much in a division race. It's the closest division race in baseball, only being a game out in the NL West. So they're going after this thing, start to finish, foot's on the gas. So no one's coming out of the game early. No things to worry about there. But if they can get to that bullpen early on, that could bode well, I suppose. That's something to keep in mind. But both of these gentlemen are high on the Phillies, high on the Astros as well. And we're talking Dodgers at Coors Field. There's a name that you both mentioned in your articles today, Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman, is that a must play tonight? Freddie Freeman, Garion?
I mean, I would struggle to say must play. I think he's in a really, really good spot. Freeman has kind of quietly been performing at his MVP level since the start of July. I think it's been a tough year for him just because Acuna goes down. Everyone kind of takes their eye off the Braves in general. He got off to a slow start in the sense that, his expected WOBA was 100 points higher than his actual WOBA. He was just not having any luck in terms of batted balls in play. And everyone was like, all right, Freddie Freeman, not flash in the pan, but he's not going to have an MVP season again. And then he turns it on the last 2.5 months and everyone's already kind of past it. But he's hitting like 350 if you go back to the start of July. It's been a really great run. As Steve mentioned earlier, Luke Weaver specifically struggles against left-handed bats. This game is in a fantastic offensive environment down in Chase Field. I don't know if anyone saw Adam Duvall's home run last night. It went like 700 feet. That is the kind of thing that can happen in Arizona. So again, I would love to have exposure to Freeman. I'm going to try to get as much as I can, but to go back to sort of my thesis statement, just with the amount of money I think you're going to have to spend at pitcher, it does make Freddie Freeman being like a must play, a hard thing to navigate unless you really have some value plays you like.
Anything to add, Steve?
I mean, you just look at the numbers for Luke Weaver, and we haven't seen him a ton this season. He's only pitched 55 innings due to injury, has basically been sidelined since May, recently came back. But you look at the numbers specifically against lefties, and this is exactly why I want to be using Freddie Freeman tonight. A 5.83 FIP, a 2.1 home run per 9 inning against lefties, and only a 6.4 K9. When you compare that to the numbers against righties, it's literally night and day, because against righties, 3.19 FIP, an 0.7 home run per 9 inning, and a 9 K9. Just literally night and day. Lefties are the kryptonite when he takes the mound. So you have somebody like a great power hitter like Freddie Freeman, who Garion said has been hitting the ball really since the middle of July, averaged 11 DraftKings points over his last 10 games, 2 home runs, 3 doubles, 7 RBI over that span. That is a matchup I want to target tonight. It's a little pricey at 5,400, but literally anybody who is going to bat from the left side of the plate against Arizona tonight, absolutely putting him in my lineup.
Okay, you guys have anything else to add on the DFS front? Because I would like to get your thoughts on this MVP race in the National League and how you're feeling. I know we established off the top, we're fine. Robbie Ray, we're fine. Minus 195. So let's move on, right? We're going to not talk about that one. But the MVP race, what chance do you give Bryce Harper, who's now leaped in front of Fernando Tatis? Why not Bryce Harper, Steve? Why not Bryce Harper?
Because this feels like a more of a what have you done for me lately, more of than what have you done all season long. Even though Bryce Harper is ahead right now at minus 125, so it's still pretty close. Mm-hmm. Fernando Tatis leads him in almost every offensive category that people are going to be looking at. Runs scored, home runs, extra base hits, isolated power, stolen bases. He is leading in almost all of those categories against Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper's had a very, very good month of September. Fernando Tatis has been kind of treading water. The bigger story here is that the Phillies are making a playoff push. The Padres have fallen off the proverbial cliff and will no longer be in existence in about 10 days. I think that's one of the biggest movers of this one here. If you had Tatis to win the MVP when he was the leader, I would think that this would be a good time to maybe jump on that one more time, because when all is said and done, I think Fernando Tatis Jr. is going to have the better season overall, and that really should be what we're looking at when we're making these votes. Like the thing with Robbie Ray. You can say that both Ray and Cole have had pretty subpar month of Septembers, with the exception of what happened with Cole the last time, what happened with Ray the last time, but Ray has really kind of taken that step forward. That's kind of what's happened with Bryce Harper here. But Tatis leads in all those categories, whereas Ray has been able to do that consistently all throughout the season. And that's where the biggest difference is for me. So I think this is a good opportunity to get Fernando Tatis Jr. at plus money to win MVP this late in the year. But I understand why people are flocking towards Bryce Harper right now.
Yeah, 13 games to go. Padres are 4 games out of that second wild card, Gary.
See you later.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I mean, you could see a scenario here. It kind of reminds me a little bit of last year's National League Cy Young race, where you had 3 or 4 pitchers kind of coming down to the wire, and it was Trevor Bauer really making some incredible starts down the stretch to get the Reds into the playoffs. I mean, not everyone said that was sort of their tie-breaking thing as to what happened last year, but I think it definitely swung a lot of the voters when you look at that final sort of push that Bauer was able to make. So you could definitely see something similar where if either of these guys are to be able to lead their team to a playoff position, for as much as I don't really care about that in terms of MVP, it could have an effect. And it seems like the Padres are now just out of it. 4 games is a lot to make up. I think they have to jump 3 teams, which is also exceedingly hard with the amount of time that's left in the season. Their schedule is also awful. They've got to play some great teams down the stretch. I guess I would maybe lean Harper at this point, just based on the fact that in some of the statistics that I love, WRC plus, he leads all of baseball. He is the top NL player in Fangraphs WAR. He is the highest expected WOBA of anyone in all of baseball. He's having a phenomenal season. Now, are most voters going to pay attention to those numbers? I don't know. And when it comes to Tatis, the incredible thing is, as Steve was listing off all of the different counting stats that Tatis has lapped Bryce Harper, Tatis has been on the IL 2 separate times this season. Tatis didn't get surgery on his shoulder and decided, hey, I'll go play center field because my team needs me to come back. I mean, there's a really compelling case for Fernando Tatis. And I know, again, these narratives are always such a big part of these MVP awards. The negative publicity that's coming out of this Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis incident in the dugout, that's going to loom large. When you add that on top of just the losing, I think that's going to hurt him, despite the fact, again, this is someone who you could make the exact opposite case, that he's done everything within his power, probably at the detriment of doctors, to try to help the Padres win. So it's sort of interesting how these things can be spun, but I think with the momentum Harper is getting right now, he's probably going to come out on top here.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up, and I'm glad you did. That flare up from a narrative standpoint, I'm sure it doesn't help the case. And when you're losing a lot, and when Manny Machado, who granted did get a lot of money there, and
he's older now, he's learned.
Yeah, he's mature.
But when Manny Machado's like your go-to voice, I mean, and telling you to be accountable.
Well, apparently there was some rumors that the Padres were really trying to trade for Nelson Cruz at the deadline because they wanted, just a veteran presence, someone who a lot of the younger Hispanic players were just going to respect, someone who Manny Machado specifically cites as one of the reasons that he has this new baseball code because he learned under Nelson Cruz in Baltimore. So it's funny to think that of all the trades the Padres were able to pull off, the one they weren't was Nelson Cruz, who obviously is now helping the Rays in sort of a similar role. So kind of a weird influx point of the season where things could have maybe gone a different direction.
So as we continue, we have a couple of questions. We can save questions. We can go to questions now, or if you want to get some best bets on the table for tonight, we can do that. What do you want to do? Want to do some questions?
Do the questions.
Yeah, okay. Questions are good.
All right. Jerry from Twitch. I'm thinking, this is more of a point by Jerry. I'm thinking a couple of Dodgers, a couple of Phillies, and then throw it back with Mullins and Story, and also Correa as a construction.
You're going to have to go awfully cheap at pitching if you're doing that.
Yeah,
I'm not the best at math, but those are some expensive bats that you're going to have to be using. So if you can make it work, that sounds great. But just trying to do that in my head with the calculator that I call my brain, that's going to be tough to jam in.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot of names, and there was a lot of trying to remember salaries. But I think Steve's right here. You're gonna have to really spend down a pitcher. I mean, maybe you can get it done with like Montgomery and like a Rasmussen, but that wouldn't necessarily be my favorite build.
Okay, Obi-Wan Steve, he loves your Duffy idea. $2,000, Duffy.
That's a good idea.
He needs another cheap play.
I mean, God, I mean, I give you the guy the stone minimum, and now you need another one. I mean, I'm trying to do everything I can to assist you here. If you want to do another really cheap one, Anthony Santander is batting third. He's 3,200 going against Medina, I think his name is. From the
Medina,
yeah, Adonis Medina. I'm thinking he's no Adonis. I've never seen him, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say he's no Adonis. But I just lineup spot consider they're batting third. Some decent pop against righties too as well. So I'd probably roll with that.
Okay. Garion, anything to add?
I mean, to add this to the Santander point, really does fill that archetype of a guy you would love in what's going to turn into a bullpen game for the Phillies. Like we said, Matt Moore expected to pitch at some point in this game, and Santander a switch hitter. So someone not just batting third, but will also have the platoon advantage against any Phillies pitcher. One name that I like, I think Matt Duffy does have multi-position eligibility. He's second and third, right?
Second and third, yep.
Right. So if you want to stick Duffy at second and you really need to save money, Charlie Culberson could be an option at third base. Culberson has just crushed left-handed pitching all season long. He's got a 150 WRC plus. He's batting 350 over 134 plate appearances against Southpaws. Could be tough to play him in a lineup where you're already using Jordan Montgomery, if that is what you're planning to do. But Culberson is pretty cheap, and he's always been cheap against left-handed pitching, despite his
actually. I also have one more. If he's in the lineup tonight, Eddie Rosario is smashing the ball right now, and he bats lefty. So against Luke Weaver, we talked about this. If you're a lefty, you're in the lineup tonight. If you're on Stevie Vuke's lineup, so if Rosario is starting tonight, which I have a funny feeling he probably will be, 2,900. That's another good value bat tonight.
He's been batting second in that lineup too.
Yes, he has.
That's a really nice play.
All right, Jordan W. has weighed in on YouTube, and of course, when we plan on not talking about the early 6 o'clock window of games, Jordan is asking his favorite pitchers on the early slate. Does that mean you both have nothing to add or nothing to say?
I would look. I'll give a cursory shout out to Cal Quantrill, who's got an ERA below 2 over the past 15 starts, I think. But I'll be honest, I really haven't looked too much into the 6 o'clock slate.
Very easy. It's Tyler Mahle going against the Pirates for the 5th time this season. He has absolutely dominated that team. No reason why he's not going to do it again. Tyler Mahle is the guy you want to go with.
All right, we still have about 15 minutes, maybe 10. We'll see. We're talking baseball, of course. 11-game night slate. We can go over to the sports book, look at some lines, any run line bets, money line bets, also some props. I know Steve likes those same game parlays as well. Where are we looking here? Are we transferring any of our dialogue from DFS over to this? I know we did a little discussion about the total runs for the Dodgers. We don't have faith in the 11 hitting the over for a game total, Steve, at Coors Field, but you like the Dodgers. Where else would you like to look here on the sports book?
Yeah, first and foremost, I'm taking the under on this. As you mentioned, the Dodgers and Rockies game. I just think 11 runs is too much. Not a lot of juice, overall, but minus 115 on the under. That's, one of the highest amongst all the games on this one. So that should tell you enough about that. I'll leave this to the resident expert, but minus 110 with Manoah taking the mound for the Blue Jays against the Rays. That sounds pretty good to me. You can let me know, Garion, for sure. Well, minus 110 for the Blue Jays money line tonight against the Rays with Manoah on the mound. Pretty enticing.
It's not bad. I mean, I would just say I believe the Blue Jays are -7 and 900 in Tampa Bay over the past decade. So take that as you will. Without joking, though, the Rays have won something like 75% of their home games the past 2 years. So I would even flip that around and just say anytime you can get the Rays basically as a pick'em at home, that is something to consider. Although no Randy Arozarena, no Nelson Cruz, the aforementioned Nelson Cruz, in the lineup tonight for the Rays. They're going heavy left-handed bat stack against Manoah, as that is his non-favorable split. I would say that the two lines that really jump out to me, and speaking to your point, Glash, of kind of gleaning DFS information and using that in betting purposes, I just really like Kevin Gausman, and I don't like the Padres, and I believe this is also basically a pick 'em. Yeah, it is. At one point, you could bet the Giants as an underdog in this contest, but at minus 110 on the road, with how badly the Padres are struggling, with how good I think Gausman is going to pitch in this game, I really do like that number. In terms of game totals, the under 9 between Boston and New York. I'm just really not sure why this number is as high as it is. I believe it was 9.5 earlier today, so it does seem like it's slipping slightly. But Eduardo Rodriguez is kind of a wild card. He's someone who has had his blow up spots so far this season. You know, we continue to say like the underlying statistics are much better than his actual ERA, but you know, at a certain point, your ERA is just that high above 4 for the whole season. We're in September now. But the Mets have struggled to hit left-handed pitching all season long. They have the 6th lowest OPS against lefties in 2021, while Marcus Stroman sort of quietly in what has been, you know, just a nightmarish season for the entire Mets rotation has been really great his past 5 starts. He's got a FIP hovering around 2. He is not allowed a home run in any of those 5 starts, and he's striking out basically a batter per inning, which for Marcus Stroman is, you know, that's good. Like 90th percentile outcome for this guy. So he's kind of pitching to his peak powers right now, and I think Rodriguez is in a really nice spot against the Mets, who cannot hit lefties. So I just don't see there being a lot of runs in this particular contest.
Gary, and you're right. There was at 9.5 when the splits were put out earlier. 82% of the bets are on the over in this game. So both of you are taking unders in situations where the public is really high on the over. We're talking Rockies, Dodgers with Steve, and then in your case, the Red Sox hosting the Mets.
These people are scared of Fenway. People do not like taking unders in Fenway Park, just like they don't like taking unders at Coors Field.
It's true.
All right, so hold on a second. I just caught this. I didn't even realize this. This Twins Cubs game has an over under of 7.5.
It's the wind. It's the wind. I will shout out Matt Meiselman this morning on the Sweat for pointing this out. But apparently we are looking at 15 to 20 mile per hour winds blowing in to Wrigley. And as we all know, Wrigley Field is probably, I know Steve hates weather. Wrigley Field is one of the most affected ballparks by weather, whether it's the wind blowing out or the wind blowing in. Now, do with that what you will, because they're terrible pitchers. Alec Mills is also bad. Right. But I'm just saying that's why this number is what it is. Whether it's right or wrong, that's why it is what it is.
So Glash is laughing, right? But here's the difference. In baseball, weather is extremely important, right? Because of exactly what Garion just said. People overblow, no pun intended, weather when it comes to football, because who gives a flipping crap when it comes to football? Like you asked me last night off the air. Jared Goff's completions, pass attempts. I had a 35.5. Love that. It was one of the easiest bets of my life. He had 36. No sweat at all. Yep. Yeah. And it was on the last play of the game. Glash is texting me. Oh, it's supposed to rain. Are you worried about that? What the heck do I care?
That did not happen. That did not happen.
What?
I saw it on Twitter. You did tweet at him.
It was on Twitter.
It's supposed to rain. Yeah. Okay. Which was trolling, I believe, but still very funny.
Yes, Gary, and I was trolling because I know he hates weather. So I said, I need to know your thoughts on the weather.
No, yeah, I don't believe that at all. Look, you're not very smart. I place you as a borderline idiot. So like you might have been pretending it was a joke, but in reality, you were like actually asking. But anyways, back to my point, like people are like, oh no, it might rain in that game. What are they going to do? If the Lions are down like 21 points, what are they going to say? Dan Campbell's going to be like, oh, it's raining. We're going to have to run the ball. Even though we're down 3 scores, we're just going to have to keep running because the rain's coming down. Like nobody cares. In the sport of football, they're just going to keep playing as normal. Like people are like, oh, what about the rain? Nobody cares. You should care when it comes to baseball. So 7.5 runs, that makes sense. The wind's blowing in. The ball's not going to travel if there's 50 mile per hour winds coming in. In football, it doesn't matter. But everyone's like, oh, I gotta talk to Kevin Roth on Roto Grinders. What's the weather like for this football game? Nobody cares, nor should they care. Okay, so there's the difference. Now it makes sense.
I gotta say that
I still might take the over.
I believe in Griffin Jackson's ability to give up long home runs, even in the wind. Alex Mills, too. He's pretty bad. So this might have fallen too far.
I agree. Yep, I agree.
8:03 yesterday. Need your take on the weather.
There it is.
I'm still not convinced. I swear you were asking me in like a secret way, but masking it as a joke because you took that information and then ran with it. I guarantee it.
No. I know I've known this about you, that you hate weather, but I didn't know it was different with another sport. I thought you were just consistently
because it matters in baseball. It doesn't matter in football. They're not going to melt. The ball isn't going to not travel because it's raining.
Well,
but it matters in baseball. It doesn't matter in football. So do me a favor. I want you to block all weather pages from the month of October to the month of February. Because let me tell you something. It doesn't matter. They're still going to play the sport of football. It matters in baseball.
You know, Gary, and here in New England, a lot of talk over the years about PSI and air and football. So I think.
I don't know.
It's about the cold.
No?
So.
Okay. You will honestly just need to get off this subject.
Okay.
Talk about something else. Can we look at the Twins, the Cubs team total? I might be interested in that though.
Sure,
if the game total is that low,
is it windy?
What's the Twins? Cup 3.5. Give me the over. Over. Minus 130. Don't care. Griffin Jax is a disaster.
Again,
He's about as. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I can't credit this stat to myself, but go back and check out The Sweat. Make sure you watch The Sweat every single day at 11 a.m. on this lovely channel, whether it be Twitch or YouTube. Griffin Jax, an opponent playing Griffin Jax, has not scored less than 4 runs, and I believe his last 10 starts. Yeah, there's wind, but the power of Griffin Jax, not very good.
How about a same game parlay?
I'm exhausted now.
You're exhausted? Sorry.
I just put a lot of energy into that rant, and it was warranted. Like I gotta relax here. You know, I'm getting old. I'm gonna have a little sip of my drink here.
I'll let Steve chill for
Here
a
you
second.
go. Ready, Steve? Ready for this?
All right, go ahead. Yeah, let's do it, baby.
Cubs in the over.
Plus this guy.
Cubs total run over 3.5 plus 155.
Okay, all right. So what? All right. So build this again. So what do you want?
You want all 3?
You want the Cubs money line, right?
Yep.
Okay, and then you want over 8.5 runs.
No. You said the Cubs team total.
Oh, it's team total. Okay.
Oh, team total. Okay. All right.
Part of it. Yes, team total.
Let me get there. All right. Hold on 1 second.
I'm just
Total runs.
Your information, and there, right there.
All right, 3.5, and then that's it. Just those 2.
Yeah.
Plus 120.
Okay. Plus 120. I mean, all right. I mean, same game parlays are supposed to be like, you take your big shots there. I wouldn't call plus 120 a big shot, but if that's what makes you happy.
I was gauging your interest in that.
It's all right.
Do you have another same game parlay that you'd rather look at?
I mean, no.
Right.
You know what happened is that I'm sorry. I rattled the whole show. Like I totally get it. Like the energy, the vibe in here is a lot different. Like I totally understand. But when you bring dumb content to the show, like I'm going to tell you it's dumb. Like when you're trying to mask a real question as a joke, I'm going to tell you that you're doing it.
I literally didn't bring up weather. Garion did. Garion said, well, we know Steve hates weather.
Because it matters. I'm not going to start. I'm not going to start. I'm sorry.
I didn't do it. So don't look at me. I didn't do it.
He's gone. He left.
Did I turn my camera off? I did.
Out of pure rage.
That wasn't even on purpose. Oh, you know what I did? I unplugged my camera in a rage by accident.
It's a disaster.
Yeah, it was an accident. Totally an accident.
All right.
Glass, you want anything from me?
Let's do final thoughts. Let's do our final thoughts, and we'll get the heck out of here.
Yeah. So again, I would just say tonight you pay up for pitching. I think.
How do I get my camera back on?
Garion, mark the tape. If this was me, I'd be getting destroyed.
But I'm entertaining. You're not very entertaining. You're very idiotic.
I didn't do anything.
I never even.
Oh, what did I say about the weather? Garion brought it up. That's all that happened. I laughed.
Honest to God, I don't know what I did to my camera.
This guy.
I honestly don't know what happened. All right, just keep talking. I'm just okay. I'm a ghost.
So Garion, pay up for hitting, save on the pitching.
No. The
pay up for the pitching.
Pay up for pitching.
Maybe I'm
save on hitting.
Okay.
A lot of great options we gave already about how you can save on particular stacks, even whether it be some of the cheaper bets in Philadelphia or what have you. Steve's back.
I got it.
And yeah, in terms of the sportsbook stuff, like a lot of the stuff we went over, I will also say, we talked a lot about that Rockies Dodgers game. I wouldn't even mind throwing a little bit of money on the Rockies run line, +1.5. I believe it's +110. The Rockies are 35-17 their last 52 games at home. They just win at home. So if you're going to get the run line at plus money, I don't mind it. I will now throw to Steve for some closing thoughts.
I'm just sitting here laughing because I'm watching the delay on YouTube and my camera going off totally screwed up the whole,
oh yeah,
oh yeah, it was a disaster.
Really,
our producers always tell us make sure you have your camera turned off or turned on for a specific reason, and I'm like, yeah, sure. And now,
but it's entertaining, right?
About.
So it's allowed.
I know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Good luck tonight. Baseball's happening. Weather matters. Whatever. Win some money, I guess. We talked a lot.
Okay. Thank you all very much for tuning in to the slate. Make sure if it's raining out, bring an umbrella. Wear a windbreaker when it's windy out. If it's
definitely
snow,
done with this show.
Snow soon. Be careful. Make sure you wipe off the snow off the top of your car. It's very important. That's coming up soon. So we'll be facing that here in New England as well as Toronto. So
yes.
For Garion Thorne and Steve Buchanan, thank you to Tom Pike, also Eamon behind the scenes today for their work as well.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching the slate. Tomorrow, as Garion plugged, the sweat is at 11 a.m. And then you get PGA and NFL discussion with Emerson, Jeff, and Reed at 5 o'clock for the slate. Thanks for watching this version of the slate. You have a great night. Thank you.
Bye.